Welcome to That's Anita Live, the talk show dedicated to providing emotional healing through sharing to help you create a happier life. If you don't have a child with an IEP, chances are you know a child that has one. Parents and grandparents are more than frustrated than ever trying to get the best education for their child. Dr. Tana Jackson owns Reagan's Voice, an advocacy and educational consulting firm that helps others navigate the special education process. She's here to discuss parents' rights, pitfalls, and the top 3 things most parents should know but don't. Tana, this is a specialized field that you're in.
Yes.
How did you become the expert in the special education process?
Well, first I would like to say thank you for having me on the show. I do appreciate that. This topic is really near and dear to me because I don't just do it as a profession, but I live it. So my husband and I have 3 daughters, and our youngest daughter is a child with a disability. So really understanding what parents' needs are, I have it from a twofold aspect. So I see it as in my daytime profession, I serve as a special education director, so I advocate for parents all the time. But then I go home after I clock out from 9 to 5 and then live it all over again.
Wow.
So it was very important for me to really become an expert. So through education and really equipping myself with the things that I needed to do, I wanted to be a voice for the community. And the special education process is such an arduous process.
Yes.
Parents feel very overwhelmed and consumed with trying to just be parent, but now be parent of a child with a disability. And so our goal is to really help them navigate through that process and make them primary advocate, which is hard to do sometimes when you're trying to play both roles.
Very much so. How did you discover that your youngest daughter had a disability?
So as I shared earlier, we have 3 other daughters,
Yes.
2 other daughters, excuse me, and my husband and I.
You can throw out a 4th one if you want to.
Okay, no, it's okay. We have a 4th child, but it's a boy dog, so I had to throw that in there. And so my fur baby. But with our other 2, both of my husband and I are both in education, so understanding, like, having doing this work for a long time, I started to see about, I want to say maybe about 3 years old, that it just wasn't connecting. So all of our children started school very early. We exposed them early to education, and it seemed that Reagan just wasn't connecting in the same way. So about 3, I went to my husband, I said, there's something going on and I just don't know what. And so we moved forward, and I said we need to evaluate, because that was one of the things I felt like would help to open up my understanding about what was going on.
Okay.
And so we had her evaluated, and in April it was like Christmas. The doctor shared with us that she had ADHD, and I was like, okay, now we are on a path to understanding what she needs. And so that really helped me to understand how I could advocate for her better, because I understood what her needs were at that point.
But being in education, you had kind of like a leg up.
Yeah, but I think
Because
that
you have more exposure to the environment.
Sure. But I think that there's something intrinsically that tells you, right, as a mom. And so as you, especially if you have other children, you know, people tell you not to compare, but it's so hard not to at times, right? So, you know, I knew that there was something, but distinctively as a mom, I knew. And I think that most of our parents feel that way. Like they know that something is wrong. They just can't really pinpoint exactly what it is. But I do agree. I think I did have a leg up with understanding. I still feel like now, even with the doctorate, I still, you know, feel like how can I support her even more? Because I feel like, you know, there's not a degree to service. You know, you can't learn any more than, you know, just putting yourself out there. That one helps you to be a parent, but then a parent of a child with a disability. Like, how do I effectively advocate? And that can be challenging.
How did you start helping other parents?
So our story was kind of progressively evolving into a story. And so Reagan, all of our children were in private school. And so we knew that we, you know, my husband and I sat down and said, you know, we don't believe that it's enough for her. And so with a lot of debating back and forth, we decided to put her in public school, which at first I was not a fan of. We both came from public education, and I do believe that sometimes in special education there's a systemic issue. And what I realized, having been in the system, is that every system seeks to secure itself. And so what I wanted to ensure was that I was securing the best for Reagan. And so Reagan entered in kindergarten, and we were very transparent with the school. I wrote a letter in July saying, hi, my daughter's coming. These are all the wonderful things that she does, but here are her issues. And I really need to make sure that we partner together to ensure the best for Reagan. So we went in with this, intention. I was very honest about what I did for a living, so that I wanted them to understand, like, I understand the process. And so things just started to progressively go downhill. And so as a parent, I became very concerned, and I reached out, and I, tried to make myself known without becoming the helicopter mom. But I became that, and I was okay with that. I was so okay with that. I felt like every time I sent an email, they probably cringed.
Here's what you miss when you're not in studio with That Anita Live. But back then you said you was English. She said, oh, this said, bring me a third chair.
Last stop on the bus to the first stop on the bus, right? And then you get on the 7 train, last stop on the 7 train to the first stop on the 7 train, 42nd Street, then you transfer into the 1.
Do you want it?
Yes. But then I nick it up there.
Okay, 1 second. How hard is it to deliver food? Please tell a man to just leave the food at the front there.
Because I'm at the end of my toilet paper roll, and so I can talk to multi-generations, I can.
Ooh, Lord. I think it was when I talked to his wife.
Wow.
Yes. I don't even mention this in the book.
No, you didn't. Please, spill the tea.
You know.
You did that.
Come on. I love to have you in my audience. Now, being in education, you had a leg up.
Yes.
So for the parent that one day gets a telephone call from the school, and the school says, we want to test your child, we believe something is wrong. From that point, where that parent feels overwhelmed or they feel attacked or singled out, what's your recommendation for the next step?
So I think that, I have a theory in my mind about what I really believe happens. I think that the first thing that the parent has to understand is that they must get out of their own way. And so having the call, hearing it for the very first time, especially if they're in denial, makes it very hard. But what I do share with the parent is go to the school to find out what the concerns are, because 9 times out of 10, they're saying the exact same thing. Right? And so, the school is now probably at this point, they can no longer do what they have been trying to do, and it's gotten to a point that they need some more information. So I share with parents, I really liken it to like going to the doctor's office. If I have symptoms of a cold, I just need to know what I'm treating. And so in order to do that, I have to get professional advice, and in order to do that, I must go in. And so parents have to do the same. And so I understand getting past your own anxiety, and that's why I really always encourage parents to bring someone along. That really helps with the process, because they are speaking a language that you don't understand. And most of my parents, when they call me, they always say, Dr. Jackson, I don't have a degree in special education. I don't know how to advocate for my child. So I'm very scared when I go to the meetings, and I don't know what to say. And I feel like, I am a spectator versus a participant. And I feel like that's where the parent needs to feel empowered and bring someone along with you to ensure that, the language that's being spoken, what they're asking about, someone can interpret that for you. And that's so okay. It's encouraged.
So should the parent just say, okay, sure, test my child and let me know the results, or?
Yes, so it doesn't quite work that way. The way that it should happen is that the school will call for a meeting to review data, to determine that as a whole team, and the parent is a part of that process. Okay. So there's a school-based team, and then the parent comes in, which they are a part of that process, and the team will begin to discuss exactly what they see. So these are all the areas of concerns. We either have enough information to determine that this child is a child with a disability, or we don't. And so that's what the testing will help to reveal. I think that, again, having the parent have someone come along with them helps them to understand this is the type of testing, this is what it does. I do believe, kind of in my own bias, that schools have to do a better job with helping parents understand the process so it doesn't feel like an attack. Okay. Because they have to remember that you do this every day. They don't. They're just the parent. Mm-hmm. They live with the child with the disability. They're trying to figure it out. And when you're throwing all these acronyms and, all this testing, right, then the parent becomes very overwhelmed because they don't know what to do. And they're trusting you as the professional to do it. So I tell parents to educate yourself. You have to become an expert at this. And there's so many resources and opportunities for parents to do so. I feel like that's the best thing for them to do.
So what are some of the pitfalls that parents face when they go through the process?
The first one is definitely denial. The second one is resources. And so I feel like a lot of parents, they want to help, because this is my child, I want the best for them, but they fall into this thing of where do I find the resources? Another thing is that a lot of times the elephant in the room, if you will, is the finances. Like, do I have enough money to support the things that my child needs if the resources aren't free? And so sometimes a lot of the services that parents go out to deploy are not free services. And so they run into that, not really knowing how to navigate that system.
Let's walk through the system step by step.
Sure.
Well, we'll be right back after this to walk through each one of the steps in the special education process.
Wonderful. We'd love to.
What if I told you that you could stop the negative tape from playing inside your head? What if, with 7 simple steps, you could leave the pain of the past behind and live every day as your true, authentic self? It is possible, and you can do it. The ebook, 7 Simple Steps to Beat Emotional Baggage, How to Become Whole, Healed, Healthy, and Happy, shares how to resolve emotional baggage and feel free to live true to your own personality, spirit, and character. Transform negative thinking into positive thinking and become equipped to boldly face your past and resolve emotional pain. Get your free copy at thatanitalive.com/ebook.
And we're back with Dr. Tana Jackson, expert in the special education process. We were just getting ready to walk through the process step by step.
Yes. Okay. So the first process I tell parents is that, one, we have to have an acknowledgement of what the issue is. And so once the school team, to include the parent, has acknowledged that, yes, there's something going on and we don't really know what that something is. And so now we're going to move through that process. And so once the parent and the school has identified that there is an issue, then we go through testing. And then, wherever there's a suspected disability, so that could be in the area of reading, it could be in math, it could be a related service. So children could have issues with speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy. So the team will do a full review of what the child's needs are. And they will bring those professionals in to do, standardized testing to determine if there's a disability. Once testing has been done, the team will reconvene. Parents do have rights, and so I share with the parent all the time, you have to be very knowledgeable about what IDEA is, an Individuals with Disability Educational Act, and that's what governs special education. So I tell parents,
Which is very overwhelming.
Very much so, right? And so I tell parents, you have to understand your rights. So a lot of parents will call me and say, they tested my child, I received the test a day before, the meeting. And that, it's very counterproductive. And so what I share with parents is that anytime a school evaluates your child, you have to receive that testing 10 days prior to the meeting. It gives parents an opportunity to ask questions. Most of those evaluations are very overwhelming. It's a lot of testing. It's a lot of information. And so parents being given 10 days allows them to speak with someone or to have someone review it with them and to walk through the process and then to come to the meeting very prepared. So, you said that this is going on with my child. What does this mean? Or you use this terminology. What does it mean? And so once the team has come in, they determine that, all the evaluations are there. Then the team determines at that point if the data that is pointing to this, does it quantify enough to say that this child has a disability? And if that is the outcome, then the team is tasked with creating an IEP, which is an individualized educational plan for the child. And so what it will do is provide accommodations and resources in order to help the child reach the deficit and bridge the gap. And so I tell parents in my own world, this is kind of my Tana-ism, that I really believe that IEP stands for I expect, for there to be progress. And so when a parent goes in with that expectation, it's really giving their input as well with the school team, because you do expect an expectation of excellence. And so I share with the parent that once the IEP is written, then the school provides an IEP to the parent, a draft, because the parent has an opportunity, the team has an opportunity to kind of go through it before it's finalized. The team comes back again. After that draft is sent home to the parent. They reconvene another meeting to determine exactly what the IEP says, and if everyone agrees, the services then begin. But I tell parents that it doesn't stop there. Like, you have to be very diligent in being an advocate, but get involved in your child's education. So the IEP is not a magical tool, it's a resource. And so you still have to do the work at home by ensuring that if you don't know the resources or the things that your child needs, you ask those questions.
Now, what if a parent doesn't agree somewhere in the process? So, for instance, no, this testing can't be my child. We have to do this again.
Sure. And so within most states, there is something called an IEE, which is an independent educational evaluation. So I have taken clients through that process where the team has done it either way, where the parent sees that there's a disability and the team says, no, we don't think it is. We just think that the child is misbehaving and they're doing it on purpose. So the parent has the right to then go and say, well, I want another evaluation, just like you would a doctor. Like, you gave me this. I really don't feel well about this. I want to go to another professional. So the parent has the right to do that. The parent also has the right to say, I don't want the IEP implemented. They do have the right to say that, even if the team has come to a conclusion that all the data points to that. And so at that time, I really tell parents to caution yourself because, giving the IEP, most parents just don't want to label.
Not my baby.
Yeah, not at all, right? My child does not have a disability. They just, need more time, and so we want all of the additional accommodations and modifications. We just don't want the label. But I tell parents, think about it like as if your child had asthma. You would send your child to school and you would let everyone know, right? My child has asthma. This is their inhaler. So just in case they have an asthma attack, everyone knows what to do. Well, why don't we do that the same way in education? Like, this child needs to breathe. They need an opportunity to not go into a crisis, but we don't have the tools because we don't know what's going on. And so I share with parents that, if this was a medical condition, you would want everyone to know it's no different. And I think that the hard piece is that when parents aren't educated about it, they feel very secluded and they have to keep themselves safe because they don't know and they don't want to be taken advantage of. And the children don't either. And so, we really strive to do that in Reagan's Voice. Like, I always share that, school systems, institutions will not have our children suffering on the backs of our children. Like, I just don't believe in that. This is not a adult issue, but this is a child that needs assistance who will be an adult, and that will be effective if we put the right tools in place.
We also touched on pitfalls.
Yes.
Right? And one of the pitfalls you mentioned was parents not knowing their rights.
Yes.
What's a third one?
I would say the third one is we talked about, which would be the resources. Like, once I learn my rights, where do I go to get them? And so a lot of parents, there are a lot of programs for children with disabilities. I wanted to add another pitfall. Once a parent has determined that, my child does have a disability, parent care is extremely important. And so living this life as a parent of a child with a disability, my husband and I experienced this, there's a lot of burnout. Right? And so I always share with parents as they're going through this, you have to put your own life vest on first. So you have to have self-care for yourself and not burn yourself out and work through that process, because when you become tired, who helps the child?
How do parents keep a balance between their children? So one child has that disability. However, they may have 3 or 4 more children that do not.
That's us. That's us. So we have 3 children. And what we've really tried to make it was that, in all fairness, everyone is created equal. In terms of, we understand that there are certain things that we need to do, but we help everyone to understand that there's a level of responsibility. And so, I tell parents that you can't, because it is distinctively always a characteristic of a parent of a child with a disability, that we will always overcompensate for the child with a disability. And so we are often reminded as parents from our older children that we know that she has a disability, but she's still able to do that. And so sometimes just having
she can wash dishes too.
She can wash dishes. She can take the dog out. She can, or, I will often find myself saying, help her with this. And my oldest daughter has to remind me, like, she's very capable. Right. And so I think having the love and the care and the support around you to help to keep you balanced, and then to do a self-check. Like, would I do this with my other children? And so you provide opportunity to have them do exactly what they needed to do. I remember having a client of a parent that said, my child never keeps their room clean. I think my husband and I share that all the time with our children, without the disability too. And so what I share with the parent is that, do a board for your child, clean their room exactly the way that you want them to, take pictures of all the areas of where you've cleaned, create a board for them, and then tell them, so this is exactly what I want the room to look like, but now you've given them a visual. Like, look at where under the bed where I cleaned, does yours look the same? And so just kind of providing resources, because the other thing is that you don't want to handicap your child in any way.
And
so
we
you
tend
want
to do that.
We
when
do.
somebody has a disability,
We do.
We tend to sometimes treat them as if they're not there. We
Absolutely.
do everything for them.
Absolutely, and we can't because society doesn't, and so it's it's not a realistic expectation. But I think that parents do that because they don't have resources. Like, they don't know it's okay to let them try and to struggle. Yeah. One of the issues or areas of concern for our daughter is reading, and so I would find myself often like telling her the word, and so. Thank God for the lab school, but just with that training that I've been able to receive from them, it's like, let her sound it out first. And 9 times out of 10, like now my husband, like, we have to hide our cell phones because she can read. And so, it gets to the point where, you have those aha moments where you recognize that they can learn, they just learn different. Yeah. And so figuring out what that is for them helps to keep you balanced, because otherwise you'll be doing everything and the child will sit back knowing that you do everything and continue to let you do everything.
What is the toughest case that you've had so far?
So I feel like we have so many tough cases. I think that the toughest case to date was I had a child who I knew was emotionally disturbed. And the school fought me tooth and nail, and I had asked for an evaluation because they had diagnosed the child with ADHD. And I kept saying, ADHD doesn't flip over desk, they don't elope, they're not cursing, they're not being violent, they're not melting down emotionally. Mm. This is an emotional disability. And so the team just, did not want to do it. So eventually, they got to meet Dr. Jackson because she shows up often, not Tana. And so we get to the meeting, and I'm very adamant about this is what this child needs, and this is what we're going to do because this is the parent's right. And so eventually we did get the testing. Well, we were able to get the testing 2 days before we were having the meeting. The mom called to me in tears and said, my son is getting an expulsion. He brought a fake gun to school and told someone he was going to shoot them. Now, had we had talked about this like I did weeks ago, about that this is an emotional disability, and this child has a lot of emotional dysregulations, that the normal interventions aren't working. And so at that point, the team wanted to come back and say, we need to classify him as ED, and we need to get him into a private placement, which that's what we were saying the whole time. But again, as I talked about earlier, every system seeks to secure itself. Yes. So I was the outsider telling the professionals on the inside what to do, but I often have to tell my parents, when we get to the school, we have to remind them of who we're here for. So one of the things that I have every client do, we did this with our own daughter, was I have a notebook, and in the front of the cover, the parent has to put the child's picture there. And then everything else goes behind it, so all the documentation. So when you're at the table, it keeps you focused about why you're here. Like, this is not a number, a state number. This is not, just another piece of paper. We're talking about a life that can be impactful forever.
Yeah. If you had a parent with one opportunity to help their child in the special education process, what would you say was most important?
I would say bring reinforcement. Like, never go to a meeting or anything alone, never. Because having someone there to help you through the process kind of relieves you of saying, I don't have to do this alone. And so because the process sometimes is, it's so overwhelming, yes. It's such a long process. And I tell everyone that this is not a journey, it's a destination. And so getting to that destination, because you want, and some people will say it is a journey, it isn't, because there's an end. And so when we see it as there's an end, it's helping someone to sit with us along that process to help us see the end. There are a lot of, great things that parents can do for children, but when you're doing both roles, it's too difficult, like to play mom and advocate. So I would encourage them to, hire someone, bring someone in to really help you with that process.
Then here in the DC area, having the 3 major areas that we do, DC, Virginia, and Maryland.
Yes.
Are there big differences in the secondary education or the special ed?
No, so I think that, the laws, may vary about, some of the smaller nuances, but in terms of, what we offer children,
Yes.
the same. Yep, it definitely is the same.
Okay. Anybody have a question that they might want to ask?
Is that evaluation process done by the school, or is it something that parents have to pay for?
No, it's initially done by the school. And even if the parent does not agree, an IEE is the financial burden of the school institution. And so even though a parent may say, you did this evaluation, I do not agree, the parent has the right to go out and the school has to pay for that evaluation again. So the parent does not have to. But sometimes the parents, will get the school saying we're not going to evaluate, and then the parents feel like they have to go out and do something more. And my husband and I initially with our daughter Reagan, we did testing outside, and even then they told me that they weren't going to accept the testing. There was nothing wrong. So Reagan went months without being identified as a child with a disability. It wasn't until I literally had a meeting every 30 days, every 30 days I called a meeting, because I was like, you're putting on a Band-Aid on something that needs stitches. Like, my child is dying an educational death and no one's paying attention. I really made it clear to all of my parents that that's how you have to look at it. Like, your goal is for your child to be successful in society, but they need tools to do that, and they need to understand, what's needed. And so to answer your question, parents don't have to do that, but they have to be knowledgeable about understanding if they don't agree with the testing, you don't have to accept it. You can ask for more.
Have you ever seen the system be used against a child?
Yes, all the time, unfortunately. I think that they're great. So I don't want to paint the picture that all school systems don't do what's well for children. But my favorite line, every system really does seek to secure itself. And so once I believe school systems get in the mindset of that parents are equally invested. They're equally, and if not more, they understand the child way different than we do. Sitting at a round table saying what they do educationally is one thing, but looking at the whole child is important. So understanding the family history, the background, why this child is experiencing what they experience. I believe that if systems really begin to understand that we work together collectively as a team, then it works better. I do believe that things are great in theory, it just doesn't always translate in practice. And so that's where the discrepancy happens, because we have all these wonderful things in place. It sounds great, we have these systems, this is how we're supposed to do it, this is how we're supposed to navigate the system. And I know, in my position now, I will always get kind of that tease, like, Tana, this is not Reagan's voice. Because every parent that I sit down with, my IEP meetings are an hour and a half at, hour and a half, because I want parents to know exactly what I know. And I don't feel like it's fair for me to have this knowledge and only to help what I need to get done and not support the families. So I feel like they need to know. They have to know. They deserve to know.
Navigating any legal or life-altering process is not easy. Never go it alone. Always check the facts and get second opinions, especially when it comes to the care of your children. If you'd like to reach out to Dr. Tana, visit reagansvoice.org. Make the commitment to create the best life you can for those you love. I'm Anita, your host. Be sure to check out that'sanitalive.com for where and when to see our next episode.